We like to drink beer, a lot of it. After a long night of drinking and talking crime and conspiracies, there's nothing that wakes us up and gets us ready to start the day better than Just Brew coffee. With a great selection of roast levels to choose from, you're guaranteed to find one that suits your style. Small batch roasted to highlight the unique features of each coffee bean, Just Brew coffee caters to both casual and hardcore coffee drinkers alike. Since 2010, Just Brew Coffee has worked tirelessly to perfect the roasting process and technique, which has resulted in seriously delicious, always flavorful, and never bitter tasting coffee. If you're already drinking JBC, raise your mug. If you're not, raise your standards. Check them out in social media, and remember, they roast, you just brew.
Check out their new online store at youjustbrew.com and up your coffee game today. Use code NECRO15 to receive 15% off your order of 2 pounds or more.
Bonus episode. I think people are jacked, geeked, cranked, and stoked. Back after a 2-3 week hiatus. Bonus episodes back, and we're coming back with a vengeance. Dave, just when I thought we couldn't get more of a fucked up serial killer as we already covered, we have today.
This is maybe the most vile story that we've covered yet. And also an opportune time to introduce our new series, Hometown Heroes. This gentleman we're going to discuss tonight was born and grew up about 15 miles from the Necronomipod studios, so we thought he would be a great first addition to the Hometown Heroes series that we're going to roll out and include future Hometown Heroes in.
Yeah. So some not so claim to fame from Northeast Ohio.
And there are a lot of them.
It's just crazy that with who we've covered thus far, the Richard Ramirez's, the Richard Chases, the Ed Geins, the Ed Kempers, each time we read those, and these are all new to me as we're going through it.
Right.
So it's like we've talked about before, I am not
an aficionado
and enthusiast of this genre. I don't understand how they kept getting more and more fucked up, and I feel like we've peaked 9 different times. And then I read today's summary, and it just baffles me.
Well, this guy, he was caught right around the same time as Jeffrey Dahmer, and Jeffrey Dahmer took over the whole media. Like, the media just took over the Dahmer story.
So Dahmer stole all of his shine in the media's attention then.
Yeah.
Because I had never heard of this guy.
Yeah, he's a little known serial killer, and it's basically, like I said, just because Dahmer took the spotlight from him.
And oddly enough, he grew up about 10 miles away from Dahmer. So
yeah,
not too far from here, like I said earlier.
And was a mega piece of shit.
Yeah, this is just throw out a solid disclaimer that this is a pretty graphic story here. This is...
Well, if anyone who follows us on Twitter and Instagram saw the teaser pic that we put out yesterday, I think that gives you a small sense of what we're about to get into here. So let's learn about the Kansas City Butcher.
Robert Berdella Jr. was born January 31st, 1949 in Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio, to parents Robert and Mary Berdella. As a child, Robert was intelligent but considered a loner who rarely left his house and had little to no socialization with other kids. He had a speech impediment and wore thick glasses starting at 5 years old due to being severely nearsighted, and he was also diagnosed with high blood pressure as a child, and those medications, along with just his personality, made him not very athletic, not into sports and stuff.
A little bit of a dorky kid.
Yeah.
Do kids get diagnosed with high blood pressure often?
I don't know. I thought that was kind of weird.
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever seen that before.
Well, in the 40s, Dave, but medical science was much more advanced back then.
Okay. I will take your word for it.
his younger brother Daniel was really athletic, really into sports and stuff. And because Robert's dad valued sports and stuff and physical strength, he viewed Robert as a failure and would compare his younger brother to Robert, like proving the fact that he was a failure.
Robert's been outshined by everyone his whole life. His younger brother as a kid, and then Dahmer as an adult, like just taking away all the attention from him.
Right? Yeah.
You want to say the guy can't catch a break, but frankly, he doesn't deserve a break. So.
His dad was also abusive and beat the kids regularly with a belt.
Okay, so we're on track for the blueprint of that we've seen before.
Mark it up.
Here.
I think we're 10 for 10 on abusive parents.
But in fairness, that was pretty common back then, right? To get smacked with a belt,
I guess, but just coupled with you're a failure, your brother is.
Yeah,
right.
no, that I'm not,
and I also wonder, did he beat them with belts, or did he just kind of give them stern punishments? I think there's a none of it's okay in my opinion, but there's a fine line, I think, back then.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not condoning beating a kid with a belt, but it's pretty common back then to get smacked with a belt or a wooden spoon or something.
Yeah. It's also probably safe to say, from this point forward, what we talk about tonight, we do not condone in any way, shape, or form.
I mean, it's even hard to make jokes about it. So ridiculous.
Which Robert was really good in school. He was really intelligent, but his teachers said it was hard to teach him because he had a real disinterest in school, and it was largely attributed to him being bullied by other kids. And when he reached puberty, he had realized that he was gay and kept this a complete secret, even having a few girlfriends to cover up his sexuality. At 16, Robert saw the movie The Collector. Have you guys seen that movie?
I have years ago, and it's a pretty bleak movie.
Yeah.
So if he's basing his whole life outlook on this movie, it's not going to end well.
So just a quick rundown on that plot. It's about a man who stalks and then abducts a young woman that he finds attractive, and then keeps her in a windowless stone basement where she would die of a contracted illness, despite the man's attempts to keep her alive. And like you said, it really seems like he based a lot of his ideas off of this.
And he blamed it on her, too.
Oh, in the movie?
At the end of the movie,
Oh, okay. Yeah. I've never seen the movie.
It was a book, too, I believe, a British novel.
Also at this time, at the age of 16, Robert's father died from a heart attack. And shortly after this, his mother remarried, which Robert saw as a betrayal to his father. And he became more isolated and focused much more of his time on painting and collecting things like coins and stamps, which will make sense later.
Not tongues and ears and noses?
No.
Okay. Not yet.
So pretty benign so far.
Yeah, I mean, it's nothing too crazy. In 1967, Robert graduated from the Cuyahoga Falls High School and relocated to Kansas City to attend the Kansas City Art Institute. In his first year there, he was known as a model student, but in his second year, Robert befriended some drug dealers and started drinking heavily. He was arrested a few times for selling drugs to undercover officers, but didn't really face any jail time or anything like that.
So he wasn't very bright.
Yeah, no.
At least in the drug trade.
Right. But then also at this time, it's noted that on 3 occasions he had tortured animals in front of students. He tortured a duck, a chicken, and experimented with tranquilizers on a dog.
That doesn't sound pleasant.
Okay.
No.
Were these at a party or just on the campus or?
So with the duck,
he was trying to quack people up at a party.
It was the duck. He killed it and cooked it, but it sounded like where he did it was not appropriate, and he claimed it was for the sake of art. The other thing was some art thing that he had set up where people would hold chicks in their hands and go through this thing that would stress them out, and as they got to the end of it and more stressed, they would not notice, and they were squeezing the chickens to death.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's fucked up.
Yeah. And the dog thing, I don't know, but it's not like Ed Kemper where he's out there burying cats alive, things like that. I mean, none of this is cool, obviously, but it's not like...
Was he wetting his bed or starting fires as part of the something triad?
McDonald triad.
McDonald triad?
Right. Not the good one, like the quarter pounder with cheese, the 20-piece nugget, and a Big Mac.
No, he had none of them.
Right.
No. So in '69, Robert voluntarily left the Art Institute for this, for backlash he was getting for this stuff with the animals. And especially, I get from what I read, it was mainly the cooking of the duck was the thing that got him into the most trouble.
That's a weird one.
Yeah.
What's wrong with cooking a duck?
Yeah.
Duck's delicious.
I mean, I guess if he was torturing it first, but I don't know. It just said he cooked it, right?
It just say killed it and cooked it for the sake of art. But to me, it sounded like it was just in a completely inappropriate setting. Like it wouldn't
like
be
in
cool.
the library.
Yeah, right. Just walk in.
Yeah, just slit
And
a
he cooked
duck's
it with a
throat.
flamethrower
Yeah,
or
slit
something.
the duck's throat in the middle of a table, throw it in like a boiling pot of water. Like what?
Right.
It's art.
Just hungry. I want some Peking duck.
So he decided to stay in Kansas City and move to a house in the Hyde Park district. At this time in his life, Robert was completely open about his sexuality, and he began spending a lot of his time with male prostitutes, drug addicts, and runaways. He claimed that he would befriend these people to help them change their lives and like give them a place to stay and stuff. And he was adamant that much through the 70s he had no physical contact with any of these guys. To his neighbors, Robert was considered just a flamboyant but helpful, civic-minded person, was what they called him. The only complaints of him were that sometimes he had a stuck-up attitude and his property was very unkept. Like
Well, those two things don't go together.
right? Like they said, like the inside of his house was like a hoarder house, like real bad, and didn't cut his grass and shit.
Great.
Yeah.
But still nothing too awful here.
No, I mean, take out the weird shit with the animals.
Right.
Nothing completely out of line.
Yeah.
And through the 70s and 80s, he was really active in neighborhood watch programs, and he would eventually become the chairman of the neighborhood association in the mid 80s.
He seems like a stand-up guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Model citizen, if you will.
In 1982, Robert began renting a booth at the Westport Flea Market and called it Bob's Bizarre Bazaar.
It's clever.
Not to be confused with the Insane Clown Posse album of the same name, Bizarre Bizarre. Was a 2-disc track. One album was Bizarre with 2 A's. One was Bizarre with 2 Z's. I believe that's correct. Some juggalo will correct me, but
I bet the one song was worse than the next.
no, it's 2 albums. Oh, you mean each song worse than the
Each
next?
song was
Hey,
worse
that
than the
their
next.
biggest hit, "Let's Go All the Way," came off one of those. Just saying. TRL probably got retired at number 1.
It's something I never went through in life.
So, anyways, Bob's Bizarre Bazaar.
Because you have musical taste, my friend, of course.
Oh man, you don't want those juggalos pissed off at you.
It's all right. It's summertime now. We'll have
true.
some bonfires.
It's almost
out
time for
there.
the gathering. Are we going to the gathering
Some
this year?
ICP. When is it?
It's usually in July, down at, I don't know, about an hour south of here.
No, Nelson's Ledges, right?
Is that where it was last year?
think
Or
so.
Buckeye Lake? Depends.
That'd be a blast.
There's
I
all
think.
kind of hometown stuff we got going for us here in Ohio.
Oh, yeah.
So, what would be a more rowdy experience? Do you think going to gathering the Juggalos or the infield of Talladega?
That's a good question. I think I would take the meth and Fago at the gathering.
As being more wild?
Yeah. More interesting.
I mean, I watched
Yeah.
that mini documentary about the gathering. It's pretty rowdy.
I have not seen that.
There's
I
some
might
pretty
have to
out of
watch
control
Yeah, it
individuals
looks
there.
very interesting.
it. I can't wait.
I would go purely for archaeological reasons.
So at this at his booth at this flea market, Robert mainly sold art, jewelry, and antiques, and just it was like an odd, like he sold weird books and shit, like an oddities kind of store.
Like Spencer Gifts before there was a Spencer Gifts.
Yeah, but like books like magic books by Aleister Crowley, shit like that. Just anything weird. He would become acquainted with another vendor at the flea market named Paul Howell and Paul's son Jerry Howell. Robert kept a casual friendship with Jerry Howell through the years, helping him out financially when Jerry got in trouble with the law. And that little note about Jerry Howell will make sense later on. So really with this guy, that's it as far as...
So we'll see
his
you guys
life.
next week. Tune in on Sunday for another new
It's
episode.
a great show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the story of a nerd who grew up.
Hometown hero, hometown boy done good.
All right.
Successful flea market entrepreneur.
Yeah.
No trouble with the law.
You guys got any shout outs this week?
So we'll fast forward now to March 29th, 1988.
Well, that's a little ominous. I
Yeah.
might just suspect that some things occurred between the Bizarre Bazaar and now. I assume we'll get to that later.
Yeah, at least now, 1988, Ian and I are both alive. We were not alive the first half
Oh,
of the
you
story.
weren't? Oh, that's terrific.
Nope.
Is this the first story we've covered that we're alive for
No.
so far?
No.
Except the
Richard
Toy Box
Ramirez was
Killer.
alive, and Toy Box.
Fuck out
We've
of
covered
here.
a bunch.
So, yeah, March 29th, 1988, Robert picked up Christopher Bryson, who was a male prostitute. Robert told him he was just looking to drink some beer and party.
That's what I'm looking to do tonight.
It's literally what I'm doing right now.
Christopher thought that was a great idea to just go hang out with Robert and drink some beers because he didn't think Robert was gay and he wouldn't have to do anything sexual that night to make money. He was just going to hang out. So they went back to Robert's house and Robert gave him some beers and offered him Valium. Robert told Christopher that he had 2 very mean dogs. They were chows, and that they should go upstairs to hang out instead.
Chows are nasty.
Yeah.
I don't like
What
chows.
the fuck's a chow?
They have the purple tongue, right?
Yeah, they'll fuck you up, man.
Better Google this real quick.
They're fluffy and purple tongues.
Yeah.
They're cute, but
They're mean, though.
yeah, he had 2 big ones.
Oh, like those little teddy bear looking things?
They'll bite your ass, dude.
Yeah, those things are fucking mean.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, cool.
That's a big. All right.
Yeah, so he had
caught up.
he had 2 of those. They were really mean. So his upstairs was set up like a living room and it had a couch and a TV and stuff. So it wasn't like going up to a bedroom or whatever. So this Christopher guy was still comfortable with the situation. Once they got up to the room, Robert hit Christopher in the back of the head with a metal pipe and injected a tranquilizer into the back of his neck.
Oh, the pipe alone could kill you.
Right?
God damn. God damn.
Robert then carried Christopher into a bedroom, propped him up in a chair, then took a picture of him with a Polaroid camera. He then moved Christopher to a bed and tied him to the posts with bathrobe belts and put a washcloth in his mouth tied with an electrical cord as a gag. He also put a dog collar around his neck with a leash that he also tied to one of the bedposts.
Well, that escalated quickly.
Very quickly.
Wow, we should have stopped the story 10 minutes ago.
So, in going forward with all this stuff, Robert took very detailed notes of what he would do to people. So that's where all this is. I mean, he confesses later on, but he has very detailed notes. So at 5:30 a.m., Robert came back into the room and sat down with a notebook and started taking notes, documenting to what he was doing to Christopher. From 5:30 to 6 o'clock a.m., he writes FRT FU finger. This is documenting a sexual assault of Christopher. And later we'll get into
The codes.
but yeah, you could
figure out what that means.
you could loosely figure that one out. At 7:30 a.m., Robert injects him again and writes down what the amount that he gave him, and it was an animal tranquilizer.
I guess I have to say,
Boy.
copious note taker. It's a characteristic that we'd like to see in the serial killer.
I mean, it helps get all of our information correct, right?
When you want to know the rest of the story.
Yeah. So at 8 a.m., Christopher regained consciousness and was having a hard time breathing because of the gag. Robert walked back in and poked Christopher really hard in the eye. Yeah, I mean, that's just like...
That hurts my eye just thinking about it.
What the fuck? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, this whole story is a complete what the fuck, but Robert then left to get a cotton swab and bleach, and when he came back into the room, he started swabbing Christopher's eyes with the bleach, trying to blind him.
Complete dick move.
Yeah. Robert climbed up on top of him and started beating him again with the metal pipe. After beating Christopher, Robert hooked metal clamps to Christopher's genitals and sent 7,700 volts of electricity into Christopher's body. And the whole time Robert was doing this, he was taking pictures with his Polaroid camera.
And that's the picture we posted on Instagram yesterday.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah.
Yeah.
When he was all clamped up.
Oh,
Tied
can you
up,
imagine?
restrained.
What the fuck?
No, I could not imagine. I really couldn't. I couldn't imagine being that person or doing that to someone. I mean, I couldn't do it. I couldn't poke someone in the eye if you wanted me to. I don't have that in me.
Yeah.
So when Robert was done shocking him, he injected him with the animal tranquilizer again. But this time he followed it up by injecting drain cleaner into the front of Christopher's throat in an attempt to damage his vocal cords so he couldn't scream.
Wait a minute. Is there any medical basis to that?
No.
I didn't think so.
I mean...
It's just something he came up with.
Like throwing it like just against his neck?
No, taking a syringe and
syringe.
injecting it into his throat.
Oh, okay.
Like
hoping to hit the vocal cords and
injecting.
paralyze
Okay,
the
I
vocal
missed it.
cords. That's just something you made up in your
Probably
in
just
your
saying,
mind.
like, yeah, it would just, maybe he thought it would just fuck him up.
You know, kind of what it made me think of was like Nazi stuff, like Joseph Mengele's weird experiments with injecting
whatever
things.
you can do.
Yeah. When because this guy ran this like weird shop. I wonder if he had some books and shit and was reading and was like, hey, maybe I can try something like that out.
That's not a bad theory.
You know,
just throw everything against the wall and see what sticks.
Right. Especially because Mengele did stuff with the eyes too and stuff. That's why that was like maybe that's where he got the ideas from. So after that, the next log in his notebook was at 7:45 a.m. Robert wrote down quiet and then injected Christopher with more tranquilizers. At 3:30 p.m., Robert comes back to the room and injects Christopher with penicillin.
Oh, because that'll work.
I'm guessing that's where that Collector movie comes from, where he's like giving this guy penicillin to try and keep him alive. So Christopher starts moaning and trying to call out for help, and Robert told him to shut up, and then went on to rape Christopher. And then this is a direct quote from Robert on what he told Christopher.
You did not choose to be here, but you are. For you to survive being here, and for you to, make it, it could either be rough or it could be easy. If I grow to like you and to trust you, then I could do special things for you, such as buy you cigarettes, pick up a movie on the way home from work, and so forth. Don't try to fight me, or you'll just get more of what you had earlier. You see, what you got is nothing compared to what you can have.
Okay. So we got some Toy Box Killer similarities here with the statements.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good comparison. This really is like the Toy Box Killer, some of this shit.
Yeah.
Although it seemed like Toy Box, it seemed like he got off on the torturing.
Oh, this dude
is this dude getting off on the torturing, or is he just getting off on the raping? Like, is he getting off on the pain he's inflicting on him too? It seems like a lot of his torturing is just to keep him quiet, like blinding him and to shut him up.
Yeah, but that genital voltage shocking, that's a whole level of torture.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get into the notebook later. So Robert then told Christopher that the only way that Christopher would ever be able to hurt Robert was if he used his hands or his teeth. And Robert told him if he tried something like that, he would rip out his teeth and make it so he could never use his arms again. And then he told him if he tried to escape, he would kill him.
So this guy seems like he might be a dentist with this level of sadism he's showing in the teeth pulling. This guy's secret dentist.
So Robert, he continued with the electric shocks and raping Christopher, whether it be with doing it himself or with a foreign object, whatever. But he started to trust Christopher a little bit, so he started bringing him cigarettes. And he also started to let Christopher watch TV while he was gone. But he turned the volume up really loud so no one could tell if like Christopher was screaming or something.
Do we know if he had cable or anything, or if he just had to watch?
Yeah, so that's...
Oh, he put on the Kardashians all day long, and it was torture.
We'll get into it. That's interesting.
He's like, just turn it off and fucking rape me some more. I don't watch the Kardashians.
I thought about that, but I didn't want to say it.
Anything but the Kardashians.
No, but you said that they.
Yeah, we'll get into. I'm get into it in a second here. But with the cable, what this guy was watching. By that Thursday, Robert and Christopher were actually communicating, and Robert told him that people had gotten this far before, but they're dead now because of mistakes that they had made. So what Robert has explained to him was that he was only allowed to talk. Christopher had to put his hand on his mouth, on his own mouth. That would be a signal like I want to say something, and he could only talk if Robert touched him on the head.
Oh boy.
So that's when they got to this point by Thursday. So Christopher told Robert that he was starting to feel sick, so Robert gave him more penicillin.
He loves that penicillin.
Yeah, he's just pumping him full of it.
Well, he got it. He was getting those type of medications from a vet for his dogs. That's where he was getting that shit. Yeah. So these weren't even like. He had no idea what the fuck he was doing. This was all intended for animals.
Shooting him off with this stuff. Well, clearly he doesn't give a fuck anyways.
Right.
He's just...
So by Friday, Christopher started playing around with the knots. Like he was still had his hands tied up, but he was trying to figure out, if he could play with them and get them free.
So he was tied up like his hands like up, like,
right,
like above his head almost.
Right. Okay. But he was like reaching his fingers down, like bending messing down, with them.
Yeah.
Like that hurts after 20 minutes. Can you imagine? Like how long has he been here at this point?
Yeah, it would be miserable.
Jesus.
Well, imagine like when you wake up in the middle of the night with your arm stuck over your head and it's all numb and like dead.
Yeah.
Days. days. And still being able to like move your fingers and untie is incredible.
Yeah. There's a picture of Christopher with his hands tied up.
Oh, it'll
to
be
the
out.
top
We'll
end.
post that.
When Robert came back, Christopher asked him if he could tie his arms a different way because his arms were going numb and it was super painful being tied up like that. And Robert agreed to tie his arms in front of him. So now Christopher he could really start playing with those knots now that his hands are in front of him.
Probably mistake number one by Berdella.
Right. So Christopher also noticed in the room that there was a box of matches that Robert had accidentally left behind because he would bring him the cigarettes to smoke, but he would take everything back with him, but he left a box of matches in there. And Christopher figured that this was his way out, that he was either going to burn down the ropes or he was just going to try to burn the whole house down or something because he was just so desperate to get out. Like,
Sure.
I'll kill myself with it all. I don't give a shit.
At that point, absolutely.
Yeah. That Saturday morning, going back to talking about the cable, the NCAA Final Four was going on that weekend.
Oh.
So Christopher talked him into letting him watch the TV that day, that he really wanted to watch the basketball. And Robert figured, hey, we're getting along now. He's going with this. I'll let him watch it. So he figured he had it up real loud, that it would mask any sounds he was doing in there and whatever. So,
Okay.
Yeah. So that's where the TV comes in. Final Four basketball.
Interesting. So Marv Albert, yes! Yes!
And what year was this? We were in 88?
Yeah. I don't know who was.
I don't know who was in the Final Four.
Well, you guys were in preschool or something, right?
Not even. I was 2. You were 1.
So that Saturday, after Robert agreed to leave the TV on and let Christopher watch the basketball, he went to work at his flea market stand. And
Bizarre.
Yep.
Not the Insane Clown Posse album.
And so Christopher started working on the knots. It took Christopher about 20 minutes to get the knots untied from his wrist.
20 minutes, so he was not working fast.
I was actually going to think that's pretty quick.
Yeah, it's
if
pretty
it only
quick.
took him 20 minutes to get out of what was supposed to keep him secure for good, that's not bad at all. Once he, moved him down to in front of him,
Yeah.
when he changed the way his hands were tied.
Yeah, that's a good time.
That's not bad at all.
I was just trying to make a pun.
You're making a not joke. Guess what? It was not funny.
Damn.
Wow. You're right, it was not.
So once he got his hands free, he started to use the matches to burn the ropes around his ankles. So he was just lighting match after match and to burn those ropes. And so he finally got his ankles free with these matches, but he was sitting on the bed and there was a metal framed bed, and with all that shocking and stuff, he didn't know if this dude booby trapped the room. Like he didn't want to touch anything metal because he was afraid that he was going to get shocked.
Yeah, I
Pretty
bet.
good, foresight by him to
Yeah.
think about that stuff.
I wouldn't think about that.
No.
Think the fuck
You would
outta
think
here.
you'd want to just,
Yeah.
as soon as you burn those ropes, just get up and run. But
Right.
I guess, yeah, he was smart enough and vigilant enough to be careful about all that.
So he didn't really want to go around touching anything else to try and find his clothes. So all he had on was a dog collar, and he knew he couldn't go downstairs because of the dogs. So he opened up the window and crawled out, and he didn't even know where he was, like how high up he was or anything.
Yeah.
This room was the only thing that he knew at this point. You know?
Yeah.
So he was able to get out, and he was hanging. He was on the second floor, so then he was hanging from the gutter, and he was going to try and swing to get minimize falling
Or get to like another roof maybe to then
Right.
jump down.
But the gutter broke, and he just fell straight down and just shattered his foot.
Oh.
As if he needed another injury.
Right.
Christopher walked across the street and found a meter man who he got to call the police. The first two officers that arrived think this is some type of like a gay bondage thing that had gone wrong. And this is really like
the Dahmer scenario.
this
It's the
is
same thing.
very similar.
That's exactly what happened to his first victim, and how many people ended up getting killed because of that.
Yeah.
Which, like, why would the cops just immediately think that? Like, was this like a gay community that he was in? Like, why would they immediately, was it because he had a collar around his neck?
Well, I mean,
Like, just because he was naked and had a collar, they assume,
Yeah,
this
probably.
was
They're
and he's talking about the
dismissive.
sex crimes committed. Like, it's just shocking that the cops are so dismissive of that.
Well, like the kid that escaped Dahmer was 14 years old?
yeah, Dahmer.
But,
yeah,
like, I don't
the
know
cops
that
gave him
story.
right back to Dahmer, and he took him inside and immediately killed him.
yeah, they just think it.
They're just dismissive of the whole situation.
So fucked up.
Yeah, they just don't take it serious at all. It's almost like with that's why a lot of these guys go after prostitutes. It's because the police don't really care about them.
Yeah.
So, so they called the sexual crimes unit to get someone else out there, but they weren't taking it very serious either. They asked Christopher to tell the story, and Christopher, this is another thing with him like thinking on his feet with this stuff. He told them that he was picked up by a man and a woman, because if they found out that he was a male prostitute, there was a good chance that they were just going to say, forget this whole
Christopher
thing.
guy's quite wise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good for him.
I mean, and after being tortured for a week, too, on top of it.
To be able to think so clearly.
Yeah.
So they called in a lead investigator, which this guy, thankfully, someone was going to take it serious. He took it very serious and took Christopher to the station to get a report from him and medical attention. This officer immediately went to a judge to get a search warrant for Robert's home. Meanwhile, Robert's neighbor called him at the flea market to let him know that the police were there, like standing around his property, like something was going on.
Hello, Bazaar, can I help you?
So Robert went back to see what was going on and was immediately arrested for sexual assault. And that was all they had on him at that point, you know.
Yeah.
Was just,
they hadn't gone into the house yet, right?
right.
So he's probably sitting in the back of the police car like, what do you think at that point? Because he knows what they're going to find in this house when they finally go in. You kind of probably just resigned to your fate at that point.
I'll imagine so.
You would assume
Like, I had a good run.
So Robert tried to deny the police access to his home, but they already had the search warrant approved.
Yeah, right.
It was already going. And I might be completely wrong on this, but there has to be some form of probable cause here that they could just go in that house, right? Based off of what they've seen, what this guy's saying.
I would think so, with the story. And I mean,
I'm not
we're just scratching the surface of what Christopher told the officer, but it was enough to get a judge to sign the warrant, obviously.
And the big thing that I kept hearing, or when I was reading and stuff on this, was that it was an Easter weekend too. So that's where they were like fighting again. It was
they wanted to get it all, like the warrant before they went for like the holiday break.
Well, there was already people on holiday break, so they had to get this judge out, and like they were like scrambling to get this shit done. But so they got in there and they got to the second. They were looking around and it was a hoarder's place, whatever, and they weren't really finding anything. And then they got to the second floor and they saw a room that was kind of like barricaded off, it looked like. And in there they found the burnt ropes, the electrical generator with wires that were leading to the bed. They found a metal tray with syringes and a bottle of prescription drugs, and they found that metal pipe that he used to beat Christopher. So everything corroborated the story that Christopher had told them.
Tell us, Ian, what did they find next?
So as they were going through, they found a human skull in the closet on the second floor and a partially decayed human head in the backyard. They also found several human vertebrae that had cut marks matching a hacksaw and a miter saw that they found in Robert's basement.
This guy's pretty sloppy. He's not covering his tracks.
Not at all.
Not even a little.
Yeah, not even a little.
They also found a chainsaw down in the basement that had bloodstains, human flesh, and pubic hairs that were all tangled up in the chain.
Jesus, this guy's not covering up anything.
No. Well, the basement was clean other than that, but they did a luminol test.
Oh, the pube chainsaw, you mean?
Yeah, other than the pube chainsaw.
Okay.
But when they did a luminol test to the basement, and when they did it, it said that the whole place just lit up.
Yeah,
Like,
I bet.
that it had been covered in blood.
It's just like someone turned the lights on, the room gets that bright.
When they went back, they were searching back on the second floor, and what it said too is that because that place was like a hoarder's house, and it was a big house, it was like 3 stories. They had like teams of officers that were going through categorizing things. But on the second floor, they found an envelope full of human teeth.
Fucking sadist dentist, I told you.
They are the worst.
And in that room, they also found 334 Polaroid pictures of victims in various stages of torture and death.
Oh,
He documented all of it.
Everything.
Written journal and the pictures.
And those pictures also showed Christopher was in a bunch of those pictures too. So
no plausible deniability here.
no. They also found newspaper clippings regarding the disappearance of Jerry Howell, which I said earlier that we would come back to that kid. That
was his friend's son from the flea market, right?
Yeah.
Right. They found like I said, newspaper clippings regarding Jerry's disappearance.
How old was Jerry? Like, was he
19?
Okay, so he didn't really take any kids.
No, it was all young guys.
Young men.
Everybody was in their 19 to like
Okay.
24, 25. They also found a wallet belonging to another missing person named James Ferris, and like we said earlier, Robert's notebooks on top of the Polaroids detailed everything.
So the guy was a scrapbooker, more or less. Like if our friend Amy was a serial killer, this is what we would find at her house.
I guess so. She's a very good scrapbooker. Sounds like Robert essentially was too, except for all the fucked up wrong reasons.
Right.
Dahmer was a categorizer. He had tons of Polaroid pictures.
So
Yeah,
is
all
it
kinds of stuff.
is it because they're getting off on this, or why are they documenting all of this so much?
I just look back on it.
To be like, because they're proud of it, to get off on it, like what? I guess that's my question. Why,
Like-
if you know it's so incriminating, why are you taking these notes?
Do you think it's
Ed
in
Kemper
between,
didn't take notes, and he was the smartest probably of all these guys.
like in between victims, so you just have something to jerk off to?
But that's what I'm like.
Remembering all this
Yeah.
stuff.
Like, are you looking at these photos, like getting off to them?
I gotta think so.
Are you skull fucking the skull that you buried in the back? Are you looking at your notes thinking, oh, that was good, or I shouldn't have done this, and like trying to improve your game? I mean, that's what I don't know. That's just interesting.
I was listening to something with the one guy from Mindhunter that the show's actually based off of, and he was talking about this kind of stuff, and he was saying that these guys, the fantasy will always be better than doing the actual killing. That it's way harder to kill somebody. Like he said, he said from talking to a lot of these guys, every one of them says, like, the first person they killed, they're like, I didn't think it would be that hard to kill somebody, like that hard to strangle someone to actually get them to die.
Right.
So
The fantasy of it's always better than the actual
doing it. So I'm thinking, like,
isn't that true, Dave, with that Chinese swirl thing that you had told us about too?
The Chinese basket trick?
Yeah.
Well, when I get over there and get the basket trick, I'll let you know.
Maybe the fantasy's better than the actual act.
I've never been to China, so I'm gonna.
Wait, I mean, there's no
I'm
one
gonna
around
punt on
here
that
that can do that.
question.
Does it have to be authentic Chinese? Can't you probably pay the right person over here to get that
I
done?
think we could probably, with the right eye hook and
Just saying.
rope, we could probably get that going.
Just saying. That sounds like a situation where the fantasy might be better than the actual payoff.
I don't think that's probably true.
Okay.
I bet the basket trick is pretty fucking awesome.
Please
I
make sure
bet.
you keep detailed notes, take some pictures, and let us know, and we'll revisit. Maybe that'll be a bonus episode.
but I'm thinking
with a boner.
Well, that'll be on you, man. We don't know. Maybe.
But I'm thinking that's like. But I'm thinking that's why these guys would hold on to something like this, is because they could live this out again as in a fantasy.
That makes sense.
Without
fantasy.
actually having to kill again.
You'd be right. I'm thinking,
Even though they're still always going to go back to the killing.
Because it's never quite good enough.
Yeah.
right, and that's what,
Yeah.
and it makes sense with that guy was saying that it is. I mean, it would make sense. It would be hard to kill somebody, and then you're risking getting in trouble. You're risking all this stuff if you can hold on to it and fantasize about it. I guess.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Robert lawyered up immediately and wouldn't talk to anybody, and the police had to charge him with something that would stick to within 24 hours to hold him. So like we said, it was over Easter weekend, so they were frantically trying to get this evidence all categorized and identify at least one of these victims, because they didn't have a body. They had a human skull, but they didn't have like a cause of death or anything. They didn't have anything that would be like
That they could actually legitimately put a case against him.
right.
Like he could have bought that skull in South America or something. And,
Right,
you know,
exactly.
yeah.
So they found a pad of paper in Robert's house that had some names on it, and police were able to locate a man named Freddie Kellogg that was on that list. Kellogg told them how the gay community was starting to feel like Robert was preying on them by offering people places to stay, and then he said that Robert would even rape some of these guys if they didn't consent to sex with them. But then he also said that they started getting suspicious of him when some of these young guys started popping up missing, and then they're like, wait a second, that guy was with with
so
Robert.
They knew it all along, huh?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So they showed this Freddie Kellogg guy some of the pictures, and he was able to identify some of the men. So he was able to identify Todd Stoops, Robert Sheldon, and Larry Pearson from these photographs. The police were able to charge Robert with the murder of Larry Pearson because they confirmed that this guy was missing, and in the Polaroids it clearly depicted that Larry was dead. He was hanging upside down in the basement. His skin was completely discolored from being dead. So there was no way.
So
to
they
say
finally
that-
got their murder charge, or the evidence for their murder charge.
Right. And I mean, that's awesome. Police for not taking the officers that didn't take it in the beginning, like, fuck those guys. But the guy that took the reins on this and took it serious, that's some awesome police work just in a matter of a day, to get all this done.
Yeah.
He might make the Necronomicon Wall of Fame,
Right.
next to that, who was that super cop that went after Richard Chase.
Basically, so that guy got it done in 24 hours too. Basically the same
Put those
thing.
guys on the Necronomicon Wall of Fame.
Right.
That's separate from the hometown.
Well, we
Heroes wall.
should clarify. It's officially titled the Mr. Muggs Wall of Fame. He is the inaugural member. These two are just sub to him.
It's Mr. Muggs' world. They're just living in it.
That's all. We're all just living in it.
So by the arraignment for Robert, the only one living witness they had was Christopher Bryson, and Christopher, he was just completely freaked out, like just traumatized by the whole thing, and he just took off and didn't show up to court. So it's not like he just panicked and just.
I can't say I blame him, man. That's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I
guess you'd want to see that piece of shit go to jail, but
yeah,
I get that.
But it's just crazy that he did so well after he escaped with, not having any booby traps, with being smart with what he told the cops.
Right.
He was really good then, and then after probably the adrenaline wears off and everything sets in and you're traumatized, it's unfortunate he couldn't come back to see this piece of shit get what he had coming.
So now the only charge that they were left with was the murder charge. And even then it was shaky because they had no body. They hadn't had enough time to identify any of those teeth or the skull, any of the remains to this Larry Pearson guy. So unexpectedly, Robert just rolls in and pled guilty at the arraignment.
Yeah, but they weren't expecting that.
No. And that was on the advice of his lawyer. His lawyer's idea was that the gig was up, so just plead guilty, and then they can't go after you for the death penalty. Was the thought. But they only charged him with one murder, and there was obviously more involved.
Right.
They could go after him for the death penalty on other ones. His lawyer wasn't thinking the greatest on that.
Yeah.
At the second arraignment, Robert was charged with the murder of Robert Sheldon, and Robert pled not guilty to this. The lawyer quickly realized that he screwed up and that they were absolutely going to seek the death penalty.
Did the lawyer and Robert not speak ahead of the second arraignment to talk about, hey, don't plead not guilty?
I don't know. It doesn't sound like the best lawyer in the world.
Was it a
Clearly.
public defender? Did
I don't think so.
Robert had money?
I think he had his own lawyer. Yeah.
It's all that bizarre cash he had coming in.
So yeah, I mean, they quickly went to make a plea deal, and the deal was a guarantee of life in prison without the death penalty, and Robert would give them all the details on the crime. From what I read too on that was that the prosecution really wanted to go for the death penalty big time on him, but there were a lot of families involved that wanted the details on like what happened to their loved ones, so that's why they agreed to go ahead and give this guy life.
And give him that deal.
Yeah. So since Robert agreed to give them everything in exchange for a life sentence, he first gave them details on his note system, because a lot of it he used acronyms for things. So the letter F always stood for fuck. So he had...
Oh, that's clever. The periodic table of pieces of shit everywhere.
So he had CF, which stood for carrot fuck.
Hey, what's up, Doc?
Man.
CUCF, which stood for cucumber fuck. FF stood for fist fuck. FRF stood for front fuck. EKG stood for shocking. PEN.
That's clever.
I mean,
All right, we'll give him that one. That's clever.
PEN stood for penicillin. PH stood for administrating prescription medicine. And his notes also detailed how he would try to stop these men from being able to see or hear when he was coming into the room. So that's when he would use like the bleach in the eyes and stuff. But he also detailed how he would use drain cleaner in their eyes as well, and then put caulking in their ears so they couldn't hear.
So he put cock in their ears?
Caulking.
Do you know how much cock it took to plug up their ears?
About 2 inches. About 2 inches.
Like, is it hard to hear if you have cock in your ears?
I don't know. I've never had cock in my ears.
That sounds so terrifying. Someone just
Yes, it's insane. This is terrible.
that would fucking hurt when that dried.
The
too.
eye shit's what bothers me. I'm really sensitive with eyes. Like if I see someone else's eyes bloodshot or like all red,
Yeah.
it makes my eyes start to water.
Like,
or
can you imagine pouring drain
like-
cleaner in your eye?
No, I can't even put eye drops in without crying like a little bitch.
Exactly.
Like I'm not gonna do whatever other shit they're putting in there.
Just the thought of the caulking in your eye or in your ears, I feel like when it dry, like as it dried, that would be so fucking painful.
Like when you're doing projects at home, did you ever accidentally put cock in your ears?
I've never accidentally did, no. But I'm pretty good with cock. I don't make a mess.
So you finish pretty,
It's pretty clean,
pretty clean
smooth.
finish. You don't make a
Yeah.
mess.
And when you're done, you never knew the hole was plugged.
God damn.
We're really good at riffing.
So Robert's first victim that he confessed to was Jerry Howell, the son of Paul Howell that Robert worked with at the flea market.
So this is his buddy.
Yeah.
Nice.
So this one occurred on July 5th, 1984. Robert picked up Jerry and drugged his beer with Valium until he became unconscious. He then injected Jerry with the tranquilizers and tied him up to the bed. Jerry was tortured and raped with foreign objects for a period of 28 hours. According to Robert, Jerry had suffocated either due to vomiting with the gag in his mouth or not being able to catch his breath from the tranquilizers while having the gag in his mouth.
Either way, just awful.
Yeah.
Ways to die.
Either
I gag at the dentist. I can't have anything in my mouth. I can't imagine someone sticking a fucking rag in your mouth.
Yeah.
And,
A nasty, disgusting rag.
Either way, it was the gag that killed him. Either he couldn't catch his breath or he
Yeah.
puked while he had it in his mouth.
That puking one would just be brutal. Like feeling it come up and then it just all gets clogged and stuck there.
Yeah.
And you just slowly choke to death.
that's the Bon Scott.
Yeah. So he was just passed out in the back of his car. Bon Scott, original singer of AC/DC. That's how he died. Drunk one night in February
In his car.
1980.
Backseat of his car.
Passed
Front
out
seat
in the
of his
back
car.
of his car and choked on his own vomit. That's why what with it, you're supposed to, if you're really drunk, you're supposed to sleep on your side.
Yeah.
Because if that way, if you puke, you won't choke on it.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's terrible.
live and learn, kids.
But if you're tied up and gagged, I don't know.
Well,
You have that option.
you don't have much of a choice. And shot up with penicillin.
And Robert said that he tried to briefly do CPR on Jerry, but when that wasn't successful, he dragged Jerry's body to the basement. Robert hung his body upside down above a large cooking pot and made incisions on the inside of his elbows and his jugular vein. And then he left Jerry suspended overnight to let the blood drain out of his body. The next day, Robert dismembered Jerry's body with a chainsaw and wrapped him up in multiple layers of newspaper and garbage bags, and then just left the bags out with the rest of his garbage to be picked up the next day.
That's pretty bold.
Yeah.
That's like the most we've heard that he's done thus far to like cover something up.
Yeah.
Like actually getting rid of
Not
the
burying
body.
it in the basement.
Right,
Or, in the backyard.
yeah.
Right.
I mean, I guess he was taking detailed notes and pictures though. So
Yeah. On April 10th, 1985, Robert Sheldon arrived at Robert's house looking for a place to stay because he had stayed with Robert before. Robert didn't find Sheldon attractive, but figured holding on to him would be a good way to let out frustrations he was having at the time. So he drugged Sheldon and tortured him for 3 days, and he got particularly brutal with this guy just because of the fact that he just wanted to hurt somebody is what it sounded like.
Yeah. Take out his aggression.
Yeah. He used piano wire to tie his hands and the gag in his mouth to just purposely cut him the whole time.
And as we all know, you can use piano wire to sever your own head, just like Toni
Yeah.
Collette did.
Mm-hmm.
oh, and that
Hereditary.
shitty movie.
Jesus. But I mean, imagine that, a gag tied in your mouth with piano wire. It's terrible. And then he's detailed too that he repeatedly shoved needles from syringes underneath this guy's fingernails.
That might be the worst part of this whole story.
That one, like I couldn't imagine what that would feel like. Coming from two guys who bite their nails
Yeah, I don't
repeatedly.
really have any nails.
Like
It'd be even
do you know
worse.
how like it's probably all dead under there anyways? I think by now.
But a syringe?
Oh, that'd be terrible.
You know, he wasn't just poking; he was probably jamming it.
Yeah, well, he's not just like diddling around; like he's fucking going in there.
Yeah.
Man, this is a really terrible story.
Yeah. So after these 3 days, a contractor came to do work on Robert's roof that Robert forgot that he had scheduled. So he decided to suffocate Sheldon by tying a bag around his head.
Roofer's here. Time to kill you.
Yeah, seriously. Oops, forgot. Now you got to die because of my mistake.
Gonna put a Walmart bag around your head.
Because, with all this madness and killing that I'm doing, I'm still concerned about my roof. Gotta patch that up. In case I ever want to sell this, put it on the market one day.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. That's just such a mundane thing. Like,
it's very
fuck.
odd. Like all this is going on. Oh, I had to schedule a roofer.
Yeah.
He fit that into his schedule throughout in the middle of these torturings
exactly.
to call a roofing company.
Just the mindset of these people is fucking crazy.
So yeah.
Well, he went grocery shopping a lot, right? To get carrots and cucumbers and stuff too.
Yeah.
I mean, not even to make a joke. Like, you just have to go out. Like, there's someone locked up in your home that you've been torturing, and you go out to the grocery store to go just buy stuff and be normal.
Yeah.
People walking by this guy in the middle of the store not thinking a thing about it.
Yeah, like, oh, this guy must love salads. No, he's going home to rape somebody with these fucking vegetables.
To CUCF somebody. Or what was the other one? CF somebody.
So, yeah, after Robert Sheldon suffocated with the bag around his head, and he dismembered him in the bathroom on the 3rd floor of the house. The following June, Robert found a guy named Mark Wallace hiding in his shed to get shelter from a severe thunderstorm. So talk about a fucking bad luck on that.
Seriously.
To sneak into that shed.
Yeah.
Robert offered Mark to come inside, and Robert said he noticed that this Mark guy was really tense and just seemed, I mean, he was like, it was a homeless guy, so it sounded like he was just real worked up and whatever. So Robert offered him.
Was it a stranger who just happened to find the shed in the storm, or was it someone who had, like, he knew him, just it was a stranger?
No, he didn't know this guy at all.
This was pure terrible luck.
Yeah.
By Robert Sheldon.
So Robert offered to shoot him up with chlorpromazine to help him relax. Mark willingly decided to take Robert up on the offer. And being homeless, I mean, who knows what this guy's situation was, but I'm sure he's not.
Well, he probably trusted him
drugs
enough and was like, oh, you got something to make me relax? Hell yeah.
Yeah. After Mark had passed out, about 30 minutes into him passing out, Robert decided that he was just going to keep him.
He's watching for half an hour.
You're just here now.
Yeah. It's terrifying.
Should I keep him or should I let him go?
It sounded like what he was doing was just sitting there looking at this guy debate and like,
right.
Should I keep this guy or
he loves me not.
Maybe he was just extra stressed that day and decided, all right, I need to take my stress out.
Yeah. So Robert shocked Mark and experimented inserting needles in the painful pressure points on Mark's body.
Oh my God, what does that mean?
It just sounded like he was.
I think it means he's sticking needles in his pressure points.
It sounded like he probably had one of those, a book or something from his place that talked about pressure
right
points.
here on your wrist.
This is the
and on
worst.
the inside of your elbow and in the neck.
Yeah.
In between the toes, maybe.
Yeah, I would assume some places like that. So Robert said that Mark had died as a mixture of the drugs, the gag, and a lack of oxygen. So it sounded like this guy just suffocated on the gag again.
Jesus.
And according to Robert's notes, it said that Mark died at 7 p.m. on June 23rd. On September 26, 1985, Robert answered a phone call from someone he knew named James Ferris, who asked if he could stay at Robert's house for a couple of days, because this was another guy that previously had stayed there before.
This is effortless. He doesn't even have to go out and find these people. They come to him.
Well, he trusted him. I mean, they said he was doing this all the way through.
He was the head of neighborhood watch. Like, people liked this guy. For real. Like,
homeless people show up in his shed.
Well, that might
they just appear at his house. He puts no effort into this. They come right to him.
Well, and what, like it was saying through the 60s and 70s that he was just he was doing this and like giving these guys places to stay. And then what year did this start with Jerry Howell? Was that 82?
84.
84. So it's like something snapped in his head where he's like, I'm just going to act out these fantasies all of a sudden, you know.
He just put it off for so long.
Right.
Yeah.
So these guys already trusted him. But so Robert agreed, and as he was talking to him on the phone and agreed to let this James guy stay at his house, he already made the decision right then that he was going to take this guy captive. Despite what Robert had already done to his victims, he said James was the first victim that he really wanted to torture bad. So he arranged to meet James at a bar and later brought him home with him. And then when they got back to the house, he hid tranquilizers and food that he had given James, and then tied him to the bed before torturing him for 27 hours straight.
Why did he want to torture him?
It's in his confession. It just said this was one that he wanted to torture really bad. Like the other ones weren't bad enough, but yeah. But yeah,
27 hours straight.
Yeah.
So that's probably also coming from his notes, where he probably details everything he did for 27 hours.
Yep. So yeah, so he did 27 hours straight. He tortured James using the electrical shocks, needles into the pressure points, sexual assaults performed by both Robert and with foreign objects. Robert noted in his log that James was unable to sit up for more than 10 to 15 seconds at a time. And then the next entry noted very delayed breathing, and then his death was noted.
Jesus.
So, I mean, that's basically that you're being shocked and raped to death for 27 hours straight.
I mean, your body can only take so much. It just gives up at some
It's
point.
impressive he lasted 27 hours.
It's just.
I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
This might be the worst story we've ever done. Just the prolonged
I can't.
torture that you can't even fathom this.
I'm trying to think back. I mean, all of them are terrible in their own ways, but you think about the ones where like Ed Gein and Ed Kemper, a lot of their fucked up shit was after they were dead. The victims, they would skin them and skull fuck them.
But torturing people
like
for 27
so I'm thinking
hours.
like Richard Ramirez and this guy might be the two worst. Ramirez didn't really torture them, but he beat a lot of them pretty badly.
Yeah.
And would rape, I think, some of the women.
Right.
This guy, I think, probably is top of the list of the Necronomicon Wall of Shame.
Yeah, I mean, this is. I really can't think of outside the Toy Box Killer and like.
Toy Box Killer's pretty bad too.
Yeah. And like we were talking about Peter Curtin before we were recording. Those other than that, I think that this he's got to be really.
Yeah, this is really bad.
Peter Curtin, I'm sure someone will cover.
Oh yeah, for
in
sure.
the future. Well, now we have to after teasing that he might be as bad as this.
So on June 17th, 1986, Robert had a chance encounter with a man who had lived with him for a brief time back in 1984 named Todd Stoops.
There you go, Dave. Another chance encounter with someone. They're falling into his lap.
They are. Yeah. That's what's so strange about this story.
So Todd Stoops was a drug addict and had worked as a prostitute at times. Robert invited Todd back to his house for lunch and added that he would give Todd the $13 he needed for drugs if he had sex with him.
$13?
I guess in 86 money. I don't know what.
Well, 84. Ian, we weren't alive, so I don't know how much the going rate for drugs were then. You know who would know? Betty Hill.
Well, weed was not that expensive in 1984. I will tell you.
You can confirm. You would not have to.
You get quite a bit of weed for $13.
You would not have had to sleep with Robert Berdella for weed money. Oh boy, we got to laugh somehow during this episode.
Robert was able to keep Todd alive for 2 weeks before he died.
2 weeks.
Robert used electrical shocks on Todd's eyes while they were closed to try and blind him.
Oh my God.
So he just like attached him to his eyelids.
Dude, at that point, I'd be like, dude, just give me a knife. I'll cut my own eyes out. Quit shocking my eyeballs.
But again, that's not a medically, or I don't know.
No, he's just
scientifically, like shocking your eyeballs doesn't make you go blind.
He's just trying to destroy
He's just making
them.
stuff up.
Yeah. And he used the drain cleaner again, injected it into his throat to try and stop him from being able to speak. While he held Todd captive, Robert repeatedly raped him, and on June 27th, Robert noted that he ruptured Todd's anal wall with his fist, causing him to have massive bleeding.
That doesn't sound great.
No.
I mean, these are horrific and painful ways to go.
Yeah.
Like, there's just no doubt about it.
So, I feel like I have questions about that, but I just don't want to even go down this road.
I would.
I mean, it's the same as rupturing any wall in your body.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I guess that's just so. Ugh. Is that officially the worst death we have talked about on this show, besides Mr. Muggs getting shot at point blank range at Jonestown?
I mean,
like that's
if
terrible.
I had to choose a way to go, that would not be the way that I chose.
It's not the top of the list. It's not the top 100.
I would not.
No.
Because
it's horrific.
Yeah, because that happened.
How aggressive do you have to be for that to happen? I mean, I'm not expecting an answer, but like just the pain that you would be experiencing.
This guy's a monster.
Yeah, it's definitely not something that the way that I would want to go out.
No.
No.
In a word, no.
Because it's not quick either, as we'll see.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
I want to go asleep in my bed when I'm an old woman like Rose from the Tannins.
Just slowly close your eyes, go to sleep, and not let that be it. Never thought we'd get a Titanic reference on today's episode.
No, definitely not. No.
See how that works?
Especially not when we're talking about a guy dying from being fisted.
Well, right. When I think of Titanic. But we kept the tradition going of talking about some random movies in every episode that we do.
Towards the end of Todd's captivity, Robert tried to feed him ice cream and soup, but he just kept throwing everything back up. And then on July 1st, 1986, Robert noted that Todd couldn't breathe in a sitting position, and then he later died that day. So it's presumed that he died from septic shock from his anal wall being ripped. So that's from June 27th from July 1st. That's how long it took
4 days
for that guy to just...
Can you fucking imagine that?
To die from that?
I wouldn't. No. That would be pure hell.
And just to be tied up like that, not, able to do anything about it.
You can't defend yourself. You can't protect yourself. You can't cover up. You can't treat any wounds. You're just prone, and that's it.
Yeah. In the spring of 1987, Robert met Larry Pearson. This was a casual friendship that began when Larry went to his flea market shop and told Robert that as a kid he had an interest in witchcraft, and Robert had some witchcraft shit there, so he bought some stuff off him. They just kind of sparked up a friendship.
Hey, Bizarre. I used to like witches.
Oh, you're a juggalo? Me too. Let's hang out.
Shortly after, Pearson temporarily lived with Robert and would do chores around his house to instead of paying rent. So it's just another guy that he took in and let live with him. He didn't initially intend to capture Larry, but formed a plan to do so on June 23rd when he bailed Larry out of jail.
What'd Larry do?
I don't know.
He didn't anally fist someone until they died. Could tell you that much.
Oh, okay.
Just saying.
Maybe a little disorderly conduct?
Probably
Maybe a little drunk in public or something.
Okay.
We've all been there.
So Robert made sure that Larry had become intoxicated before injecting him with the chlorpromazine, and then moved him down to the basement. When he had Larry down in the basement, he bound his hands above his head and then linked the rope that he had used to a brick column in the basement before injecting Larry's throat with the drain cleaner.
Hey, do we know if this is Drano or Liquid Plumber?
Everything I saw just said drain cleaner. But I mean,
Just curious.
Just looking for sponsors here, man. If we can get another sponsor, that'd be great.
that would just be fucking painful in itself, man. That would burn so bad. Drano or something into your neck.
Yeah. This chapter brought to you by Liquid Plumber. When a real plumber's just not available on the spot, Liquid Plumber will meet all your drain cleaning needs.
Oh my gosh.
So then Robert brought down the electrical transformer down to the basement to do the shock torturing to Larry.
Did he play the Peter Gabriel song "Shock the Monkey" while he was performing this act?
No, it was Kiss's Shock Me.
Make me feel better.
Put on your black leather. Now we're just literally reading lyrics from the song. Or reciting them off the top of our heads. But, Necronomicon is pro Kiss.
I'm indifferent.
2/3 of Necronomicon.
2/3 of Necronomicon is very pro Kiss, and one is indifferent. So we're pro Kiss. Meanwhile, I'm outvoted on AC/DC, so I guess we're not pro AC/DC.
Yeah.
Most overrated band in the history of music.
We've discussed this during Richard Ramirez. We're not going to do it again. You just have a wrong opinion.
According to Robert, Larry was the most cooperative of his 6 victims. On the 5th day of his captivity, and by this time he had torture with the electrical shocks, and Robert even went as far as breaking several of his hand bones with the metal pipe that he was to make him submissive. So Robert figured that Larry had earned his trust as he continued just to cooperate with stuff. So as a reward, he agreed to move Larry to the 2nd floor, so out of the basement, with Robert first telling Larry that if he continued to cooperate, he would not be, he wouldn't have to go back down to the basement. Throughout the last 6 weeks of captivity, Larry trained himself to sleep without moving, which I don't even understand how you would.
I don't know what that means.
Well, how do you train yourself? And 2, how do you do that?
I don't know.
Maybe he trained himself to have sleep paralysis every night.
Right.
And he would just lay there and be conscious but not know how to move and then fall back asleep.
Yeah, like in a to not want to go back down to the basement.
Right.
You know,
I guess. Some people don't move a lot when they sleep, though. They can fall asleep in one position and wake up in the same position.
Yeah.
I am not.
Who knows what you do?
I am not
after
that person.
Captivity like this,
Right.
I mean,
It's true.
Jesus.
So out of 6 weeks of
6 weeks.
captivity,
Can you fucking imagine?
He's got like a broken, mangled hand. He's had all that shit put in his throat and his eyes.
yeah.
His ears are probably all cocked up.
Out of desperation, Larry bit into Robert's penis before just like screaming out that he couldn't take anymore. And
Was Robert flaccid, or did he have a boner?
he,
Well, Dave, I don't know if that was in the notes.
Just asking for a friend.
there is a hospital report of it though that he did go to the hospital with his
Like how much of his penis got
like it was
bitten off?
damn near bitten off. Like,
Oh,
yeah,
woo.
yeah. So that's
He
why he.
deserved it.
Yeah, it's like, we're going to sit here and feel bad for this guy. Should have been bit off and fed to him himself.
So in response to getting bit, Robert killed Larry by first beating him unconscious with a tree limb and then suffocating with a bag tied around his head.
Where did he get the tree limb?
I don't know.
That's what Ted Bundy used in that last the sorority house in Florida.
Yeah.
He beat those girls with a tree limb.
Maybe he went outside.
That's weird.
Took a tree limb down.
Yeah.
Like he's got all these tools up in the metal pipe and all. And
Right.
He beat the guy with a tree limb.
Maybe he has a wall of weapons and
So
there's just a
weird.
tree limb hanging on it,
Maybe.
Okay, I don't know.
along with his Drano and his
Liquid
caulking
plumber.
and his liquid plumber.
So yeah, he beat him with the tree limb and suffocated him with the bag before he drove to the hospital to get treatment. And like I was just saying earlier, there is a record of him going to the hospital and
How much was
getting
his penis was gone?
pretty much bitten off. Like it had to be
Oh boy.
completely
Like John
redone.
Wayne Bobbitt, kind of.
And it wasn't all the way off, but it was. So yeah, when he came back, he dismembered Larry's body in the basement, and then he initially, for whatever reason, stored his head inside a freezer in his house, and then eventually buried it out in the backyard. So Robert was sentenced to life in prison without parole at the Missouri State Penitentiary. While he was there, he made a ton of complaints that the prison was withholding his high blood pressure medication. So in '92, Robert got in contact with a counselor that he had first met when he went to prison named Roger Coleman. Robert started telling him that they were withholding his medication, and he made tons of complaints to this guy about this. And then on October 8th, 1992, Robert complained to the prison staff about his heart pains and was taken to a medical wing of the prison, and their staff determined that his heart was unstable, and they called 911, and Robert was pronounced dead at the hospital from a heart attack at 43 years old.
Wow.
And then shortly after he died, a judge that was the judge that oversaw his trial, was named Alvin Randall, was informed that he died, and he's quoted as saying, "Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy."
Well, damn.
So
Well,
that kind
He's
of,
not wrong.
Yeah.
but that kind of brings in like this whole ethics thing, because it's pretty clear that they were not giving him his medicine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a
Look,
weird.
the guy's a piece of shit, but he still afforded the rights of anyone else.
Yeah.
I 100% agree. I don't think there's much to talk about with that. Like that's murder.
Yeah.
It's not their job to dictate who lives and dies.
Right.
He was not sentenced to death. He was sentenced
Right.
to life in prison. So if he's not safe in prison, then no one else is either. So
Yeah. It just seemed
And that's
like
not to stick up. I mean, the guy
No, yeah.
probably deserved this death, but that's not for the prison guards to determine.
that's right.
Yeah. And it just seemed like a conspiracy type thing that nobody was willing, no one gave a shit. Or
How long was he locked up? Like, so how long did he suffer in prison?
What, 4 years, maybe? 3-4 years?
because
And they were withholding it the whole time?
that's what he said.
Do you think he suffered for 4 years, or was it like not even really noticeable for a while?
I don't know.
I
It's
wonder.
just like a high blood
I'm just wondering,
pressure
like,
thing,
how much
yeah.
did he suffer? Now, because now looking back, it's like, all right, well, you kind of hope he suffered a little bit. Not that it's
Well, that's what
right
I mean.
with the way they did.
That's
things,
what I
but-
mean about like the ethics. It's like obviously the guy, you could say he deserved whatever he got, but that's not the.
No, ethically, I think they should have been probably charged with murder. The prison guards that withheld it. But as just someone looking back on the situation, I'm glad he didn't have a pleasant end.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it was okay.
Yeah, because I mean, when the judge even says like "fuck him," basically, you know, you're not.
And that's probably not right.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Whatsoever you do to the least of my brothers, you do unto me. Jesus said that.
I thought Bon Scott had said that. We're just going back to some AC/DC tributes.
Just throw out some Jesus quotes.
Yeah, so that's
what a feel-good story for a Thursday morning, whenever people are listening to this.
Yeah,
this was quite a fellow.
Yeah,
Again, a hometown hero.
Yeah, we have a lot of them. We have a lot of hometown people we can do.
We touched on it. If you're listening to this on Thursday or Friday or Saturday, just wait till Sunday's episode. We're going to keep this trend going a little bit with fucked up stories. We'll just tease it at that, and you'll have to wait and see.
And hometown hero is clearly in jest, lest anyone think we're putting this fellow up on a pedestal.
No, we already said he's on the wall of shame.
Yeah,
we have the Mr. Muggs wall of fame, and the do we dub anyone yet? The wall of shame.
He can be at the top of it.
Yeah, the Robert Berdella Hall of Shame.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it might just be that. I'm going to start putting their pictures on the different walls. All right, Ian, you got anything else of Robert Berdella? Anything else to talk about with him? Anything to wrap up, close out with?
No, I think that's it.
We covered all the sick, inhumane, fucked up shit he did.
Yeah, it's a rough one.
Dave, what about you? You got anything else on this guy?
No, he is. He's not my favorite. I have a shout out to our new pal Kane Blazer 531 though. Thanks for your support.
There we go, from Twitter.
On Twitter,
yeah. All right, we will check you guys on Sunday.